Welcome to another Down the Rabbit Hole video, doing another Friday Foursome for Novabug. He has flipped the tables on me. He had mentioned in the previous month, we talked about our 4 favorite female protagonists, and he said you can kind of predict where the next one's going, and I had it one way, and I was preparing my list, and he made it the other way. It's actually for female antagonists, for villains, for bad girls. So I was like, oh, okay, well, luckily, in my 4 favorite, I was going to put in one entry who is in this list, but I couldn't because she was a villain. Now she will reign the roost. That's perfect. But I have a problem. I was like, now I just got to come up with 3 more villains. It's really hard. But luckily, I have managed to come up with a list, and in fact, there's one that I think everybody's going to choose, so I might slip in a secondary for that position. But I will start off with my number 4 choice, and she is ironically very similar, but the reverse of my number 4 choice for my favorite female protagonists. Back in that video, it was Jill Valentine, who starts off as our hero and briefly becomes villainous, but turns back into our hero. This time around, my choice for number 4 is Sarah Kerrigan from StarCraft Brood Wars, and I think she's in the second game as well. She actually begins very briefly in the military units fighting against the Zerg and the Protoss, and she's a heroic character. But due to some very poor choices from the leadership of the Terrans, she is placed into a dangerous situation where she is surrounded by Zerg and she gets taken over by them. And then for the rest of the game, and I think into the sequel, she is a villain through and through. And she has been morphed into this half Zerg, half human creature. And she is very powerful, very dangerous, very nasty. She definitely belongs in the number 4 spot. My number 3 spot is probably the one that everybody's going to have in their list. I've just filmed this after watching Wee Bob's video. Thankfully, he didn't choose her. So I'm going to do so now and get my vote in. And if other people take her, well, that's fine too. That is GLaDOS from Portal and Portal 2, obviously. And she's made a few appearances in other games. Now, she's actually just a machine, just a robot or a computer entity with a female voice, She presents as female. So, is she a female antagonist? We'll slide in a little cheat and say, sure, she qualifies as such. And of course, I mean, one of the best villains of all video game history. So, fantastic. Has to be in there. Love GLaDOS. But I do suspect anybody else is going to be, luckily, Wee Bob did not choose her. Anybody else who's going to be making this list is going to probably put GLaDOS in there. So what I'll do is I'll insert like an extra little one. In case you're all sick of hearing GLaDOS for votes, I'll also say, well, if you want to accept GLaDOS, can I slide in, and this is an obscure one, Doranjo, who is a female villain from an anime series, Yataman, and she does have some video games associated with her. There's one on the PlayStation 1. There's a couple of Wii titles. She's both in Tatsunoko vs. Capcom, which is where I know her from. She's she's one of the best in the fighting game roster. Do we allow fighting game characters? It was allowed last time for favorite female character, so why not? Sure, okay. And she's also got, other games where she has made appearances. I actually kind of really found out about her from Tatsunoko vs. Capcom, and I know that there's actually a cross, I think that Bokan is the name of the series that she's also in, of anime. She's a villain in Yataman, but she also appears in like another series called Bokan. And in it, the Gatchaman characters or Battle of the Planets characters show up. So we got Jun Swan, also known as Princess, who I quite like. And I kind of remember those two going at it, kind of being antagonists against each other. So that's sort of why Doranjo kind of makes the entry But it's a bit obscure. So I'm gonna put GLaDOS as number 3, but if she's too popular, if everybody's choosing GLaDOS, I'll put Doranjo in there instead. My number 2 choice is one that I hadn't even thought about, but just recently there's been a lot of talk about Dragon's Lair, and the second game, Dragon's Lair 2, has probably one of the greatest, most annoying female antagonists ever, and that is Daphne's mum. Now, she doesn't actually have her own name. I tried looking it up online. I think she's only ever known as either Daphne's mother or Dirk the Daring's mother-in-law. The very first part of the game for Dragon's Lair 2, you are discovering that Daphne's been kidnapped again, and her mother is really mad at Dirk, and she's like, "Go and get her, and I'm gonna make you suffer." And it seems like a pretty small role for one of my favorite female antagonists, and I don't know if favorite really qualifies. The thing is, that opening is really hard. I find Dragon's Lair 2 a lot harder than Dragon's Lair 1, and I don't tend to play it all that much. I've got it in various forms, and it's not fun. But that opening, like when I first saw a Dragon's Lair 2 machine in the arcade, I was like, oh wow, I really like the first one, let's play the second one. I throw in my 50 cents, and all I would see is Daphne's mother threatening Dirk, because you're trying to do all the connections. I'm probably going to have to play the video a few times in a loop here, because that's really all that I saw of Dragon's Lair 2. I could never get past the opening where Daphne's mother is chasing Dirk around with the the rolling pin. So unfortunately, yeah, that is both why she's number 2 on my list. She is very antagonistic. She represents everything about Dragon's Lair 2 that I know. I have watched the full-on playthroughs and stuff, so I know other stuff happens. And I guess it's a good game, but I much prefer Dragon's Lair 1. And the reason I can't get through Dragon's Lair 2 is because Daphne's mother is all I ever see. I get knocked out and wiped out constantly, taking on Dirk's mother-in-law, and as a result, I would say, yes, she does deserve the spot as the number 2 in my list. Which means number 1, and anybody who saw the last video or knows me at all, knows that my number 1 choice by leaps and bounds above all these other ladies has got to be Poison from Final Fight. I really enjoy that character. She's had a long history with me, and it's funny, like you would think, well, she's one of a bunch of bad guys in a street gang in Final Fight. Like, what is it about her that really makes her all that noteworthy compared to all the other villainous characters that are background, gang members, the Foot Clan in Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle. Like, what is it about one member of the Mad Gear gang that really makes her stand out? I've talked about this at length. I won't go into it like super detailed, but this video will be half an hour long. But the thing that I noticed about the sprite work when I first saw Poison was, hey, wow, they've actually made, like, it was sort of the first character that I saw that was, like, no longer just a mess of pixels, but, like, actually a fairly coherent female character. And I thought, hey, wow, they've actually made a character that looks almost like from a cell of animation in a way, as just made of a collection of pixels. That's really cool. And then years later, as more of Poison's background and complexity started to bubble up to the surface, I began to think, okay, what? And I've done a whole video about this, and I'm not going to retread that material. I'll put a link below or above as to my full-on deep dive into the whole Poison background history, all that kind of stuff. Both her and Roxy, the other character in the Mad Gear gang that nobody ever seems to talk about. But yes, Poison, absolutely number 1, more so because of what she became as a representation and the significance of what I have learned as a person from the community that she has been embraced by, to cut it short. So as a result, she's really become a very favorite character of mine, and so therefore, top of the list of my top 4 favorite female antagonists. So to recap, we've got Sarah Kerrigan from StarCraft. We've got GLaDOS, or if people have chosen her too much, I'll slide in Doranjo. We've got Dirk's mother-in-law from Dragon's Lair 2. And finally, Poison, absolutely number one, leaps and bounds above the others. Novabug says there's probably only going to be one left after this, so maybe it was going to be what I had originally predicted this video was. Maybe it'll be something else that I think it might be. I don't know. We'll see. I'm kind of sad this is going away, but here we are with possibly the last or second to last Friday Foursome. Until next time, we'll see you down the rabbit hole.